Welcome to the Are Relevant Daily Draft Podcast. It's the early Thursday edition. We are the warm-up act, but let's not fool anybody. We are going to be covering Baylor, Auburn. That's not a warm-up act for anybody. We got some good quarterbacks in the game, but big news today, Taylor. And the big news for Taylor is not that Taylor Swift was engaged a couple days ago. The big news for Taylor is Micah Parsons got traded. What was your reaction?
I think it's a good trade for the Packers, right? Puts them in contention at the top of the NFC. I think anytime you get a player like Micah Parsons, even if you have to pay him $47 million a year, I think it's going to make your team better. So interesting to see that it comes to fruition here a week before the season starts and not, in March, as some people might have pointed out, or maybe Jerry Jones could have shopped this around all offseason for a little bit of a better deal. For whatever reason it's happening now, obviously that relationship was, completely severed by this. And I think it hurts. Obviously it hurts the Cowboys, but yeah, Cowboys probably have to take a little step back and reevaluate their roster moving forward.
So Steve, I want to put you on the spot. What is the second most significant NFL transaction this week?
Ooh. Boy. That's a good one, actually. Well, with cut down day, I could be very facetious and say, the Jets carrying probably a very questionable 5 wide receiver room or 4 in Garrett Wilson. But that's more of the pity depression side. I don't like to make too many jokes about it because, you see so many of these guys as rosters go down from 90 to 53 and, a bunch of them wind up on practice squads and others, the dream comes to an end. So, it's always a tough week, especially, for the draft professors, right? We're doing work on a lot of these guys, and we all have our opinions of where we think they may go or may not go. And, now some of them, it's done, So, that was a good question. There were some very good pickups. You know what? I'll give a tip of the cap to Bill Sparks and say Malachi Corley joining the Cleveland Browns. He had a first round grade on him. He was a bit of a disappointment. The Jets really tried to trade up into the second round for him. I had a third round grade on him, so it was pretty appropriate to where he went. He went top of the third round and, it didn't work out, but you see that a lot.
Yeah, I'll give you one too, real quick, just because we talked about it in the draft professors chat very briefly. Who was the best wide receiver over the last 10 years? Amari Cooper signed with the Raiders. So that's a pretty good one in terms of positive news, I suppose. Jacoby Myers wants a trade. We'll see if that happens. It doesn't sound like it. The Raiders don't want to move him. So will be interesting to see how they mix in with the rookies there.
And the inside joke at Buffalo was, what retired veteran is Buffalo going to add to the practice squad next? So Buffalo brought back Jordan Phillips for the 4th time. Jordan Poyer is back with Buffalo. And Buffalo added a number of veterans to the practice squad. Dane Jackson is back with Buffalo in the practice squad. So Buffalo's practice squad, I think most teams, you look at your practice squad and it's first, second year players. And Buffalo's got these guys that are 30 plus on the practice squad. So, but that being said, we want to talk about the Auburn Baylor game. And Taylor, you had a really good stat pre-show. Was that you said 21 of the 22 players return when which team is on offense?
When Baylor's on offense. So I think when Baylor's on offense, Auburn's on defense, 21 of the 22 projected starters were on those rosters last year. So not a lot of transfer movement. Not all of them were starters. Not all of them started every game last year, obviously, but they were on the roster. So there's only one transfer on the field when Baylor and Auburn, or Baylor's on offense and Auburn's on defense.
Okay, and Baylor on offense, the focal point is quarterback Sawyer Robertson. So, Steve, I'm going to have you do this one first because I think it's going to be difficult to follow Taylor on Sawyer Robertson.
I was hoping he would go first.
I'm going to let you warm it up.
Yeah, I kind of like being the spoiler and throw the dagger. So I was hoping, look, Sawyer, love his build, right? 6'4", 220 is where I have him at. He's a big frame rhythm passer. I really like him in, I can't think of the offensive coordinator's name, Spa Vitals offense in that spread. He moves the pocket really well. Taylor may disagree with me. I'm sitting on pins and needles waiting right now. He's my quarterback number 7, but I do have a good second round grade on him because I do think a lot of quarterbacks are going to go very high, in April. But there are things he does well. He's good at, identifying the safeties, and look, 3,071 yards, 28 touchdowns to only 8 interceptions and almost a 63%, completion percentage. I mean, he is a guy, and he is the guy.
Yeah. So we are going to be covering Baylor and Sawyer Robertson specifically a lot in September and October on this station. And the reason why is Taylor. Tell us why you like Sawyer Robertson even more than Steve's second round grade.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, that's Jarrett Stidham's cousin that we're talking about, Sawyer Robertson. Yeah. So everything that Steve just said, I'll echo. He's 6'4", 220 pounds. I think he's way, way more athletic than people give him credit for. He had a lot of rushing yards early in the season. He had 4 rushing touchdowns, and he averaged 28 yards per rushing touchdown. So he is explosive. He's made 3 of those 4 touchdown runs were 20 or more yards down the field. So I think he's a little bit more athletic than, and shout out Bill Sparks here for Jake Delhomme. I thought that was a little bit of an under comparison. Obviously, I'm higher on Sawyer Robertson, but Steve mentioned the 3 or 62% completion percentage. But over the last 6 games, when they went on that huge win streak, he threw for 1,500 yards during that streak, 17 touchdowns, and completed 66% of his passes. So you really saw it in those games. I think he had one bad game against Houston during that stretch that I haven't had a chance to fully dive into every single play, the snap, the details. I've watched it. You can see the highlights. But I think he threw 3 interceptions in that game, still won the game, right? And even the 3 games that you look at prior to the 6-game win streak, in those games, he had 10 total touchdowns and only 3 turnovers. I think that's what sets Sawyer Robertson apart from maybe some of these guys for example, like Rocco Becht, another Big 12 quarterback. He puts the ball in harm's way a lot. He throws the ball, a lot of turnover-worthy throws. He had one in the game against K-State. I just looked at it again, and he had one. It was 14-14 in the late third quarter there, and he had one that should have been intercepted by K-State. It was dropped, and then they ended up leading them to a win, obviously, in that game. But for Sawyer Robertson, the biggest thing for him, for me personally, is that the way he moves in the pocket, I think, is better than anyone that I've evaluated in the class so far. The way he moves his feet in the pocket, and the way that when he's adjusting from the second level to the third level, or the third level to the second level, or to the first level underneath, whatever it is, he always tries to reset his feet, which I think is great. Because if he's looking downfield and then he comes and he's going to check it down, he still will flip his hips, square his feet, and make the throw. So I think that's really, really good. And then again, he ran for 230 yards and those 4 touchdowns, kind of like what I talked about. And then here's a stat. I think he's, of all the quarterbacks returning as starters in college football, he's number 1 in QBR. So say what you want about QBR. If you agree with that stat or not, whether how accurate it is to how they play on the field, he's the top returner in the entire country. So I think that's really important too. And again, he gets second year with Spavital in the offense. So I think that's going to be a huge gain. And again, when Spavital took over from 2023, they averaged 377 yards per game on offense. Last year, they averaged 441 yards per game. So, and this kind of leads me into my next point here, but let me first wrap up Sawyer Robertson, and I'll give you my 2 comps for him. I think that with the offense coming back with Josh Cameron, Ashton Hawkins, that we'll get to, Bryson Washington, obviously, as well, the whole offensive line returns except for that 1 transfer, I believe, on that offensive line. And then Michael Trigg also returns, another, NFL draft prospect we like at tight end. So every single piece is coming back for year 2 of that offense. And I think it's going to be really, really fun to see kind of how it explodes this year.
So a couple questions. Sawyer Robertson, is this it for him? This is his last season of eligibility?
Yes, it is.
So we know he's in this draft class.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So he's not the name that you're going to constantly hear invoked, right? There's other quarterbacks that may or may not be in the draft class that everybody else is talking about. We know that Sawyer Robertson is in this draft class. And depending upon who you talk to, there are people that have a day 3 grade on him. You heard Taylor say he's got a first-round grade on him, and you heard Steve in the middle with day 2. We're going to keep covering Sawyer Robertson as he gets through the season, right? And we'll see what the evaluation is when the season winds down in February. But until then, you're going to hear a lot of Sawyer Robertson. But that should not diminish the quarterback on the other side. So we've got 2 quarterbacks in Auburn, Baylor, that you need to be familiar with from a draft standpoint. And the quarterback for Auburn is Jackson Arnold. Now, my understanding is Arnold is not necessarily in this draft class. He is draft eligible, but there's a good chance that Jackson Arnold goes back to school for the season after this. But Taylor, what do you have on Jackson Arnold?
Yeah, I think Jackson Arnold, former 5-star recruit. So he's highly touted. And I think when you kind of look at it from playing the position standpoint, a lot of struggles at Oklahoma last year, right? There was a lot of like Deion Burks transferred. He was supposed to be a breakout. He got injured, right? There was a lot of injury. I think someone said on a different podcast, there was 5, maybe it was EJ when we were on the last podcast, say that there was 5 wide receivers from Oklahoma that got hurt before the season started last year. So it was just a kind of a crazy year in Oklahoma for Jackson Arnold. Obviously, I don't think he started the entire year, but he looks to have a fresh start in Auburn. And I think from everything that Hugh Freeze has said this offseason, it's kind of just like, hey, he used to be a 5-star, and like he's showing us kind of why he used to be a 5-star. So I thought that was telling enough, right, from the head coach. Obviously, the coach is going to hype him up, but that's kind of Jackson Arnold's thing. He's always been highly touted and never really gotten there. And I think, if any year, with Coleman on the outside and Singleton transferring in, like he has a really good opportunity to take a leap, especially with that offensive line being a little bit revamped from what it was kind of patchwork together last year in Auburn. So they have a lot of returning pieces. I think 6 returning starters on offense. So that'll be good for Jackson Arnold to kind of get acquainted with them, especially the receivers. So I think he's fine. I think he's kind of a day 3 quarterback for me. I think I mentioned Drew Lock to him to Steve when I was referring to him earlier. He can do it with his legs a little bit, and I think Auburn will utilize that. But ultimately, I don't think he's a franchise-changing quarterback.
Steve, where are you in Jackson Arnold?
Yeah, I hadn't had a chance to take a look at the Drew Lock comp. I could see it. He's got a compact base. He's got a live arm. My issues with him is being able to do a better job identifying the blitz, and pressure recognition. He tends to drift when there's pressure coming, from the edge. So I wonder if in practice, if he gets a little nervous when he sees, Keldrick Falk coming, wearing the red, even though he's wearing the red. And he needs to just process his hot reads a little faster. He did put, up a very good game. I guess it was last season, Iowa State. Let's see, over 300 yards, and he had really good rhythm. He had a bad game against Texas, but I won't hold that against him, given what Texas is. Right now, if I had a pick, and I don't have my grades in front of me, probably a day 3 guy. But, as that clock on NFL Network or ESPN is getting to like 5 p.m., 6 p.m. on Saturday, I think that's the window, where he falls. I thought of the name. And maybe this is a little bit more of recency bias, but I see elements of Spencer Rattler in him, as another name.
Yeah.
So it was thinking of the day 3 thing that made me realize.
So a couple things I think that will help Jackson Arnold. The word needs to be consistent. He doesn't need to be great. He just needs to really remove the bad games. Try to avoid having a bad game, right? You don't need to be the best player on the field, but don't lose the game for your team. I think if Jackson Arnold looks average, that's actually an improvement for him. Kind of thing, right? So consistency for Jackson Arnold, go back to school after you have a consistent year, and then we'll be talking about you next year the way we're talking about Sawyer Robertson right now.
I think that's fair. And you look at the pieces around him, let's start with Taylor brought up the receivers. So you got Eric Singleton, you've got Horatio Fields, even the O-line in front of him from Chaplin on one side and Mason Murphy on the other, Damari Alston, how they integrate Jeremiah Cobb, who I like primarily as a returner, but, he still adds a different wrinkle, and then right in the middle of that O-line is one of my favorite centers in this class, or interior O-lineman, and Connor Lew. The pieces are there for him in Freeze's system for him to succeed, and I know it's the SEC, but I think this gets back to why this game, even though it's a non-conference game, is so important, but it's important for both teams, whether it's Baylor or Auburn, because, does Baylor want to stand out as a player in the Big 12? And does Auburn want to show, well, at some point, maybe not this season, but we could compete in the SEC?
Yeah, so Taylor, each quarterback has a receiver that's going to be at least mid on everybody's board. So there's wide receiver Eric Singleton for Auburn and wide receiver Joshua Cameron for Baylor. How would you compare and contrast Singleton to Cameron, and where are each of them on your board as we sit right now?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to fully give my grade on either one of them. There weren't some of the wide receivers that I looked at early in the process, but I did just from watching, these two watching Sawyer Robertson, obviously, and then trying to pop into the Georgia Tech film. I think he transferred from Georgia Tech, correct? Right. So I think between these two guys, Josh Cameron is more. I don't know. Did Singleton return for Georgia Tech too? Did he return kicks? Because Josh Cameron,
I don't know.
He's a returner. He likes to return, but he wears number 34. He looks huge. He's like 6'2", 2. He's a massive body build, and I think from everything I was looking at before, and you watch the tape on Sawyer Robertson, and you see Cameron obviously stick out because he's so big. But a lot of his plays were kind of curls on the outside, come back 10 yards here, 12 yards here, 10 yards here. I think what Baylor's really missing is some explosiveness in their offense. And I think actually the other wide receiver on Baylor, Ashton Hawkins, I think he kind of gives them some more explosion. But that is exactly what you're getting from Eric Singleton, in my opinion. You're getting an explosive player that can change the game in one play, right? By taking the ball 80 yards to the house. So I think those are kind of the difference. I think Josh Cameron is more around the line of scrimmage. He's going to do the dirty work. I'm trying to think of a comp, maybe a Tim Patrick or someone that's just going to be around the first down marker, get the first downs, move the sticks, be in the right spot, good returner. So he's a solid prospect, but I think Singleton has a different, game breaking ability than Cameron does.
Steve, how about you? Where are you on Cameron versus Singleton as you stack your wide receivers?
So I view Cameron, despite the size, 6'1", 224 pounds, I actually like him as a possession wide receiver better in a slot, in that offense. He's definitely a red zone winner. He has the ability to pivot and whip, in that, whereas Singleton, despite just being 5'10", and we do see, I think it got mentioned on your show last night, there is a place for these shorter wide receivers, these sub, 5'11" guys. And I think Singleton is good in that vertical role. So that would be the difference. Like I said, Singleton more in the verts and Cameron more in that slot. Now talk about Horatio Fields. he's more that boundary, backyard football, go to the post, I'll throw it to you, kind of guy. He is there, he's a good bracket for Singleton. He's a third down answer. So, but that's essentially where I view the difference between the two.
Okay, so where do we want to go next as far as, we're on the offense. Well, let's stay on the offense and we'll save the highest ranked player in the game for last, I guess.
Yeah.
Where do you guys want to go on offense next?
Yeah, I have a spot we can go real quick because I told Steve in the preview that we wanted to talk about the coaching matchup here. And I think it's really interesting with Jackson Arnold taking over as the quarterback. They announced this offseason that offensive coordinator Derek Nix is not going to be the one calling plays solely. So the way that they broke it down is essentially the offensive coordinator, Derek Nix, is going to call first and second down plays. Quarterback coach Kent Austin is going to call third down plays. And then ultimately Hugh Freeze has the final say. I thought that was the wildest thing ever with the new quarterback. Apparently that's slightly how they did it last year, according to the reports that I read. But I just thought that was wild. You're coming in whereas Sawyer Robertson, right, is coming in with the second year OC. They're building that up together. They have the camaraderie once Sawyer took the job last year. It's like Jackson Arnold's coming into a whole new situation, and their offensive play calling is going to be by committee. Have we ever seen offensive play calling by committee really work out? I can't personally remember.
You know who I think about? I think about who was it? Was it the Patriots? When Belichick brought back in Joe Judge and Matt Patricia instead of on the defensive side, to do offense. And guess what? It didn't work so good.
It didn't work. I don't like this move. I think it completely maybe Auburn skill players are good enough, right? I know we talked about Damari Alston. We talked about Jeremiah Cobb. We've talked about Horatio Fields, Singleton, and Coleman. But ultimately, right, if the play calling's not cohesive, if it's not united, if there's egos in there, which apparently according to Hugh Freeze, there's no egos in the offensive play calling room, but it's also there hasn't been a game played yet, right? We might get into Waco tomorrow night, and it might be a total. We don't know what's going to happen. So I am concerned about that as far as the coaching goes, especially when you look at the fact that they're going up against Dave Aranda, who's one of the best defensive coaches in the Big 12. Like he has a defensive-minded coach. He calls the plays for the defense. Last year was actually his first year calling defensive plays since the 2019 national championship team at LSU. So he did that, and in his first year back calling plays, he earned the Big 12 Graphite Award, which is given to the most efficient play caller in the conference. Aranda was actually the 8th most efficient play caller in the entire country. So I think this matchup is heavily in favor of Baylor. Maybe I'm just not as high on Jackson Arnold, but I think that is where Baylor can really have an advantage here, especially at home. So I'm interested to see that matchup in and of itself. But I think in terms of the coaching and how Auburn calls plays, I think it's gonna really tell kind of how Jackson Arnold performs throughout the game.
I think a good matchup in that is I brought him up before with Connor Lew, is how he holds up against, I'm not perfect on his last name, Adonis Friloux, right?
Yeah.
For in that A-gap scheme, to see, Baylor uses that nose alignment, they shade, and Auburn, they have that inside zone thing going on. If there's a stalemate, Auburn will lose that RPO that Freeze likes to do. So I think it circles back to what's going to happen with that play calling.
And that is one thing that I read from camp is that they really like Arnold's ability to get the ball out quick and run that RPO. So if they can do that successfully, like Steve mentioned, like Hugh Freeze loves to run that. If they can do that successfully, they're gonna have a lot of opportunity in this offense. But if that kind of gets taken away, then they're gonna have to see Arnold beat them in different ways.
So I have a question on the offenses as well. So there's at least 3 draft eligible running backs in this game. There's Damari Alston from Auburn. There is Jeremiah Cobb from Auburn. And then there's Bryson Washington from Baylor. Do you have draftable grades on all 3 of the running backs?
I haven't looked too far on the Auburn. I know we did Jeremiah Cobb for a sleeper. Really, really like him. But as Steve mentioned, I think he's more of a returner right now. I think Alston's good. I mean, from everything out of their camp, they're saying he can be a 3-down back. But it'll be interesting to see because he had 52 rushing attempts last year, and he had 2 fumbles. So he has 3 fumbles and 120 career touches. So if he can clean that up, yeah, I think he's an option. But I think Bryson Washington is. Yeah, absolutely. Bryson Washington. I am all in on him. I mean, some of the catches that he makes out of the backfield, whether it's up the seam, he had one on the sideline where he just let his legs go numb and he toe dragged on the sideline perfectly. So I really like what I've seen from Bryson Washington. I think he ran for 1,200 yards last year. I mean, that's a great piece returning, and we're going to have to see a lot out of him because Dawson Pendergrass hurt his foot. He's out for the year. So their second best running back is a true freshman running back, Caden Knighton. So you're getting Bryson Washington as the guy this year. So I think he has a huge chance to even play so well that he declares this year, right? He's a redshirt sophomore, so he could come back. But I see him as a talent that could definitely transcend, and he does that to come out this year.
Steve, how about you? How do you stack up the running backs in this game?
I mean, number one out of the ones we're talking about, it's of course Bryson Washington. 6 foot, 216. He's a slasher, right? And he does it with a good burst. He's very decisive. He's a great check down option, but he's got good hands to be a reliable piece of that passing game as well that Spa likes to do. So I consider him draftable. Damari Alston, when I look in my notes, it's good that he's a senior, right? It's good that he put on some weight. He's a little guy, 5'9". I think right now he's up to something a little over 210 pounds. He has a good, yards per catch, right? But trying to see 3 touchdowns, and he'll be the headliner. Right now I'm UDFA on him, and Jeremiah Cobb. I know there's a lot of people high on him, 5'11". He does have good vision. He does have burst. If you wanted me to put my hand on a Bible right now, I would say, okay, I'd give him, a 5th round grade today because I think he can be effective, in running the ball. But, his thing right now, his diamond in the rough is definitely as a returner.
Okay. And then I think the last skill player we haven't talked about is tight end Michael Trigg for Baylor. And I think a good way to introduce Michael Trigg is how high can he go in the draft? Like, a lot of tools there. He's got to put it together. But to Steve, where are you on Michael Trigg right now?
I'll be honest, I'm not a great fan of the tight end class as it stands right now. I mean, there's going to be guys drafted, right? So right now, I haven't done enough on Michael Trigg to, fairly answer that. I mean, he's 6'3". Unfortunately, you can't change your genetics. I would have liked him a little taller. He's got good weight to him at 240. He can move. He could detach. I mean, he's kind of a tight end that, is that hybrid receiver role, right? When it comes to running his routes, I think he's, effective as a move blocker. In that scheme, he knows how to keep his pad level there. And I think I read that, he's on the Mackey watch, as a potential thing. My concern, and, these things, sometimes it's just me, is that transfer resume is starting to look a little long, right? He's bounced a few times now. Obviously he's not going to bounce again because he is a senior, but, I wish I could almost be like the CIA and digging in the weeds and see what was really going on there, but when they start bouncing around a lot, it puts up a yellow flag. Taylor, what do you think?
Yeah, I think he was at Ole Miss, wasn't he? And he transferred. I think, and maybe this is just me speculating, and it definitely is me speculating. I'll stop there. But Michael Trigg is not a vertical threat. But Ole Miss's offense is a vertical run offense, right? Like, he just doesn't match what they want to do. I think so. I love his role in the Baylor offense. I think you're exactly right. He kind of stands like off the line of scrimmage and like a little H-back, kind of like right off the tight end spot, and he's able to block pretty well out of that. I actually have a day 2 grade on him. I really like. I was impressed by the way that he blocked. Overall, I'm just kind of impressed with. I think his size is like. I have him listed at 6'4", so it'll be interesting to see where his verified. You might have it verified. I just have it whatever it's listed. I think so. 6'3", 6'4", somewhere in that range. But I mean, he's got the size to be kind of. I don't think he's going to be like some tight end that puts up crazy fantasy football numbers or anything like that. But I see a role for him in the NFL for sure as like a number 2, number 3 tight end, and I think he can be in that role for some years. So I'm excited about it. I think he looks like a red zone weapon. He doesn't have that many touchdowns to back that number up. So I'm hoping that goes up this year and he kind of is a little bit more of a threat in the end zone. But man, there's a catch that he had in the game against, oh man, I don't even remember who they were playing. It's a post right over the middle of the field. And he just one hands it out of the air and just continues running on down the field perfectly in stride. So, I mean, yeah, all the upsides there. I really would like to see him hit his potential because, I think day 2 for Michael Trigg.
Why don't we stay with the offense? Taylor and I had talked about this in our own chat. Taylor, how do you feel about talking about one of the matchups? So switching to the other side, Damari Alston against Keaton Thomas.
Yeah, absolutely. I am a big fan of these two, not even just Keaton Thomas. There's another linebacker as well that they got as a transfer, I believe, from Appalachian State, and Travion Barnes. I have him listed as my Big 12 newcomer of the year. I think he posted 129 tackles is what I saw. Was the Conference USA Player of the Year last year, and that was after transferring from Georgia Military Academy. So Travion Barnes, definitely look out for him on the opposite side. But Keaton Thomas was preseason All Big 12 honoree. Keaton Thomas is a very good player. And again, like I said, he's kind of the leader. He's kind of the captain of Aranda's defense. And that defense, again, was one of, pretty good defense last year. I know their secondary got beat up a little bit, and we'll get to that. But I think you're looking at a running back that has little to no production, right, in Alston. Like, we like some traits. We like some things about Alston, but at the end of the day, I don't even think he has 500 career rushing yards. So you're looking at that, and you're looking against 2 really good inside linebackers for Baylor, and I think they are going to make it challenging on this run game. But again, Auburn's offensive line is good on the interior. I think all 3 starters return on the interior, if I'm not mistaken. So at least Connor Lew in the middle. But if Alston can make some plays, hold on to the football, right? We mentioned the fumbles kind of earlier. I think that's the matchup to watch for me because Auburn has to get the run game going, especially on the RPO action in order to help Jackson Arnold out. And I think you have 2 high-level linebackers for Baylor that can put a stop to that and make it really, really difficult.
Yeah. What I have on it, and I agree with you, we spoke a few minutes ago on Damari, but preseason All-American for Keaton, great size, 114 tackles last year. He is definitely a leader, in that 3-3-5 that Aranda likes to run. I think the trick is going to be, if Baylor is going to be doing those blitzes in the A-B gaps and throw a guy like Damari off, will they spin a safety to keep Thomas clean? So that he could get to that point of attack, but it's an interesting matchup, but I do think that it's one that Baylor could probably win.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And like I said, I like Alston. It's just it's really going to kind of depend on the offensive line, right? Getting to the second level, because if they can kind of wash, those 2 linebackers out of the game, then that's going to give a lot more opportunity for Alston to make plays. If they can mix in Jeremiah Cobb on some third, whether it's third down, whether it's, different plays, screens, get him involved. I think it's going to, just give another level of their offense by inserting Cobb. So I'm excited to watch that matchup. I like Alston. It's just, he hasn't done as much as these other 2 linebackers have. So what do you think about the edge versus the transfer tackles, right? Let's get into the transfer tackles for Auburn maybe. We have Mason Murphy and Xavier Chaplin. I've seen some draft professors have Xavier Chaplin way up the board, inside the top 25. Potentially, he's a massive, massive guy. He's 6'7", 348 pounds. He has 25 career starts. Mason Murphy on the other side, from transferring from USC, has 22 career starts. How do you think they can put a stop to the Baylor kind of pass rush?
Yeah, so I think, what it's going to come down to for Auburn is, having maybe even adding a swing tackle. I put some notes down, 6-man protections on the long downs, and you bring in the tight end to chip to Murphy's side, really help him out that way to protect the inside counter. I think it's big pickups for them, right? To add them in, but we brought them up before. When we look at Amari in Washington, and give me 1 second, I'll give you my notes. With him, came over from Oregon. Actually, they had 2 guys come over from Oregon, and that I think one of them is a safety, if I remember from the chat. But here's what I got on Winston: 6'4", 255 pounds. He is a violent tackler, and he is a 3-down guy. So he's going to be a handful. I would imagine they're going to put him. They'll probably rotate him, but I think they're going to put him on Murphy. And this is where, you're really going to need that tight end to chip. But, I just lost my train of thought with Winston. But, it's going to be a solid matchup. He's versatile. His effort in the run defense is good. He generates consistent pressure. I do think he's going to be a Power 5 starter, and he definitely has NFL upside. I haven't done enough work at this point on Mason Murphy. Chaplin is a guy that I've seen talked about in the chat, and I started watching him, and I like what I see. Look, there's going to be a lot of tackles coming up, right? This is a good tackle class. Yeah. So it's going to be a pick your poison. Who's going to be, we get into it. Some of us are higher on Fano and Lomu, versus Proctor, and and then you sprinkle in Moanoa, in there as well. So I definitely think Chaplin has the tools to be, maybe a late day 1, early day 2 guy. Murphy, I need to see a little more, but a lot of that is just on my own.
Yeah, I think you mentioned Amari on Winston maybe, and he doesn't have even the production, right, that we see from a guy like Matthew Fobbs-White. I don't know what you know about him. He transferred over from Tulane, but he had 7.5 tackles for loss and 4 sacks last year. And they kind of used him, and I kind of read some Baylor preview and just looked at some different people surrounding the media surrounding Baylor specifically. And they said this guy is really, really explosive, and Tulane kind of had some injuries last year. So they were using him not necessarily as solely a pass rusher, which it sounds like Baylor is going to be doing. So I got 7.5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks. And just kind of when you're playing different, spots on the second level, I thought that was impressive. So that's another guy that I would keep an eye on as well. And then another guy, because he's going to play, the defensive end in that 3-3-5, that's going to be Jackie Marshall. He was the highest graded player on Baylor's roster last year, according to PFF. So he returns as well. So that's another person that they're going to have to deal with on the offensive line. So it's going to be really important for Chaplin and for Murphy. And again, I haven't looked at Murphy as much either. So I don't have as much information on him specifically, but Xavier Chaplin has been talked about at the top of this class. So I'm excited to see him kind of against these, I wouldn't say fresh, but kind of fresh pass rushers for Baylor, right? Guys that haven't really necessarily been locked on to just go get the quarterback for years. Now they're getting that opportunity. So I'm excited to watch that matchup, and Chaplin, just to see him in an Auburn uniform at 6'7", 350, basically, that's going to be a sight to see.
Yeah.
Where do you guys put your threshold on the weight for a tackle? Like 6'7", 350 sounds, that's okay. But like if a tackle starts hitting 360, 375, where do you start putting your flag up as he's too big?
Yeah, I don't want to see a 370.
Yeah.
maybe a 6'7", 6'8", 365. I have to go back and
we've looked it up on some other podcasts, and that range is about what's given. I think somebody looked it up on Mock Draftable. I think there were only 4 tackles that were over 370 in the database.
Yeah.
And my understanding is Chaplin's going to come close to tipping that scale.
Yeah, I mean, he's up there for sure, and I don't know what the verified weight is, and that's obviously going to be a huge question mark. But if he can maintain that weight, 350 or below, and continue to kind of improve, I guess this year, I think the sky's the limit with someone that size.
So, did either of you guys have a chance to watch either of the Baylor guards, Raion Lengyel or Omar Aigbedion?
Just watching them with Sawyer Robertson for me, so I didn't get a chance to dive in fully to grading them. But I did watch a little bit of Baylor's team preview that their athletic department put out about summer camp, and Omar and Aigbedion. He was one of the 3 guys. It was him, Josh Cameron, and Sawyer Robertson that they highlighted. So you can tell that he's a leader amongst the team just from that alone. And obviously his play was pretty good in 2024 as well. Like I said, returning 10 of 11 starters on offense is good for business.
Steve, how about you? Anything on the guards?
I've got one note on Izavion Murray, but I'm going to circle back to what we were talking about a minute ago with the size, and I needed to look it up. So in 2020, when the Jets drafted Mekhi Becton, Becton was 6'7", and he was pushing, it wasn't exact, but he was definitely over 370 pounds, and he had the knee issues. And now he is at, according to the Chargers site, 6'7", 363. Granted, he's no longer playing tackle. Philadelphia moved him inside, and they had good success with him. Of course, they have one of the best O-line coaches in the game. But back to Baylor. Here's what a note I have on Xavier Murray: 6'4", 320. Certainly his strength is in his size. Excellent in the run game push. His lateral agility leaves a little to be desired. His balance. He's more of a developmental guy. And Taylor, you mentioned Omar. No, who did you mention? You mentioned.
I mentioned Omar Aigbedion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then Taylor did drop his name as one of the 3 key players in the Baylor offense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nope, I don't have anything on him. So, brief note on that.
But
the season will dictate.
Yeah, I will add just about their entire offensive line. It's cohesive, right? They of the 5 starters on offensive line, this includes Sidney Fugar, Raion Lengyel, Colton Price, Omar Aigbedion, and Caden Siraki. I think one of those isn't starting, but those 5 linemen have played in 91 career games for Baylor. And again, the offense put up 34.5 points a game last year. So most people are returning from this offense. And even, I don't know which one of those guys isn't the starter. I think the transfer guy was the one that got the other starting guard spot. But those 5 have so much experience that even if one of them's not starting, that just makes the experience even deeper, right? So I think that's a pretty fun matchup to watch.
And they've been covered on other podcasts. Just from if you're building a board, the Baylor guards, specifically Omar Aigbedion and Raion Lengyel, those are 2 guys that you should have on your offensive line watch list. Mm-hmm. Aigbedion is going to be a road grader. So if you have a power running scheme, he would fit right in. So I think Ryan Sparks and a couple of others said Houston Texan right there, like Omar Aigbedion, Houston Texan. Raion Lengyel, the other guard, I was told he was more of the puller. So if you have more of a zone-based blocking scheme, you might prefer him. But that being said, at minimum, the Baylor guards should be on your watch list. Even if they profile to day 3, they're probably going to be on the higher end of the day 3 offensive line. Okay, where else do you guys want to go with the players in the game?
Well, I think, as we get closer to the 8 o'clock hour, I don't think we'd be doing justice if we didn't start talking about Keldrick Falk, right?
Yeah.
This was the drum roll moment, right? I love the dude. He's my second edge right now. Go back. I wanted to talk a little bit about him against, say, Colton Thomason, Sean Tompkins. But the dude is just a player. I mean, and he's played multiple positions. He's got the basketball background. I think he's also played. Did I read correctly that he might have also played quarterback at one point in another spot? Yeah. But Taylor, what do you have on him?
Yeah, I mean, this dude is probably going to be a first-round pick. And I mean, he's going to be the difference maker, right? I don't think Baylor's returning tackles are necessarily that dominant by any stretch of the matter. I mean, they had a decent offensive line, has some experience, right? But they don't have to match up against guys like Keldrick Falk very often. And I think Keldrick Falk if they can shut down Keldrick Falk, I think that's going to be one of the keys to the game. But Keldrick Falk, man, he is really, really good. He had 11 tackles for loss last year, 7 sacks, 7 quarterback hits, 6'6", 285. I mean, he's quick, he's explosive, and he's going to get to the quarterback. And if Sawyer Robertson can kind of evade him and they can keep him in check, I think this is definitely advantage Baylor. But he's a guy that could wreck the game by himself.
Yeah, I agree. He closes with bursts. He's solid, with the run. He's like a forklift when you look at the arms, right? Just in what he's able to do. And he could certainly be, the game record, the length, the pop, the way he swats his hands, the way he's able to convert speed to power, with those arms. He could flash a tight inside counter, if a tackle, oversets. I definitely have a good first round grade on him.
Yeah, I think even just sticking with this matchup, and I wanted to continue to talk about this earlier. And one more point I want to bring up about this matchup between Baylor's offense and Auburn's defense. 1 year of defensive coordinator DJ Durkin, they brought him in last year. After 1 year, they doubled his salary, and he's now the second highest paid defensive coordinator in the entire country. So keep in mind, like, DJ Durkin gets Keldrick Falk back. A lot of these guys on defense are sophomores, juniors. Like, they played a lot of young guys last year, so they get a ton back. And they just made DJ Durkin the second highest paid defensive coordinator in the country. On the flip side of that, Baylor's offensive coordinator, Jake Spavital, who we talked about a little bit, Andy Staples ranked him as the 9th best offensive coordinator in the country going into this season. So this game might not be a top 25 matchup, but on the Baylor offense versus Auburn defense, that is a top 10 matchup, right? You're getting, 2 top 10 coordinators going head to head. So I think it's just such a fascinating matchup to watch with all these returning players and all the talent, especially at the NFL level. So I'm so excited to watch Baylor on offense.
Yeah. So Taylor, I'm glad that you bring that up, because part of, like, when we're picking which games to preview, it's easy to do LSU, Clemson, and Ohio State, Texas. Like, we've done those games. Just go back in the channel, you can watch. But this game, low key, let's play a little game here. Steve, how many first-round picks are playing in this game for you? And obviously, things can change. We haven't played a game yet. But
yeah, between the two, for me, first-round picks. For me right now, 4.
What?
4 first-round picks.
Oh, wait, who are the 4 first-round picks for you in this game?
I can see, based on how the season plays out, I could see Sawyer climbing in. Right now I have an early second on him. We brought up Keldrick before. Okay, I definitely have a first on him. Connor Lew, I have a first-round grade on him. And right now, I do have a first-round grade on Xavier Chaplin. So those are my 4. Yep.
Okay, and then Taylor, how about you? How many first-round picks for you right now are in this game?
So for me, it's just two. I only have Sawyer and I have Keldrick Falk. But I think it's really interesting bringing up Connor Lew. I think I gave him around 3-4 grade. When I first looked at him, a few weeks ago when we did the offensive line kind of first look. But you asked on that podcast whether or not we can see someone transcending into the Donovan Jackson range or into the Gray Zabel range. And absolutely, you could see a guy like Connor Lew ascending into that territory. I have Jake Slaughter ahead of him as my highest rated center, but he's probably right there in that conversation. And then like we talked about with Chaplin, like the size, it just stands out right from the get-go. So if he can kind of get some of his mechanics straightened out and he can have a really good year with, against a really tough SEC schedule, yeah, I could definitely see him, moving into the first round. I haven't actually went through and graded Xavier Chaplin yet, so I can't say that I didn't give him a first round grade, but of the players that I've graded, just Sawyer Robertson for me and Keldrick Falk.
And then in addition to that, from a day two perspective, I think I heard about a second round grade on Eric Singleton a day two grade on Eric Singleton from both of you.
Yeah.
Right. And again, it's still a projection. We still have 14 games to play. And then one of you said day two on Michael Trigg.
Yeah,
right?
I have him as a day two guy. Absolutely.
And then I'm looking. Joshua Cameron has potential to be day two, I think.
Yeah, if the team really likes his return skills and he can take another leap in terms of explosive plays, I think potentially, yeah. But I could see him in that round 4 or 5 range.
Right. So in this game one, there could be 7 players that are drafted in the top 100. Mm-hmm. This is a big game.
It is. There's a ton of talent, and we didn't really.
And I actually have day two grades on Friloux, and we didn't get a chance to really go into Auburn's O versus, the receivers versus Baylor's secondary. Mm-hmm. But, I really like Devin Bobby, the safety. He's a senior, so obviously, draft eligible. But I have day two grades on the nose tackle as well as the safety.
So talk about the nose tackle for a little bit, because I know that we haven't hit every player that's on the list.
Steve, I think we did go into it a little bit. I'm actually going to start on the safety, and then I'll circle back. So, Devin Bobby's an interesting guy, 6 foot. He's a little under 200 pounds. He's, I don't want to call him like a Jamal Adams, who I saw, and he got the nickname Blitz Boy, with the Jets fan base. But he is a downhill striker. He takes his angles. He's a 3-level safety. He's got good range, and he is a much better tackler with good temperament than, say, a Jamal Adams. 2024, 80 tackles, 5 pass breakups, 3 interceptions. These are good numbers. There's advanced film where he could spin late to a post. His timing window is good, and the glances that he could do, and in spying the quarterback or coming in for the running back. It's an okay safety class. I did really like elements of of 2025's, but I like Bobby. I've got a day two on him. Taylor, did you do any work on him?
I haven't, but I was actually, when I was looking into this just before, we talked about Northwestern safety transfer Devin Turner. He tore his ACL in the spring. He'll be out for the year. And I think the Baylor fan that I watched on YouTube break that news he mentioned Bobby's name as someone that needed to step up this year in absence of Devin Turner. So yeah, I'll be excited to watch kind of how they're able to overcome that loss, because that is such a big loss. That was going to be a huge piece of their secondary, especially one that was not great in 2024. So yeah, I think, he led the team with 3 interceptions last year. So they also get Caden Jenkins back in the secondary. He's played 23 games. And then they also got a transfer from Duke as well. And his name is Placide Jungo Sungo. I don't know much about him, but he just transferred over from Duke. He hasn't played much, but just another guy to maybe keep an eye on in a rotational secondary.
I think the issue with Caden Jenkins, you said it. He's played some games. You know, he is a long guy. He's very confident. Good freshman year in 2023. He knows how to squeeze the verticals. I don't really see him as a press. He's definitely more skilled in my notes to a zone. Auburn may be able to influence him a little bit with some post wheel, stuff that they have in their formation. Did you want to, before we wrap up, did you want to give your things on Adonis Friloux?
Yeah, so for him, he came over from Tulane. Him and I believe I already mentioned him once, but Matthew Fobbs-White. They're both transfers over from Tulane. And this is a big body. He's listed as 6'2", 346. But he's quick, man. He's quick, and he's fun to watch. So he had 2 tackles for loss last year. Not a lot of production out of him, but that's not really his role, right? His role is over the nose, kind of like Steve mentioned. So I'm excited to watch him, play against a little bit tougher competition, although Tulane did have some big-time non-conference games over the last couple of years while he was there. But yeah, I like Adonis Friloux. I think he'll help, in the middle. I think that matchup against Connor Lew is going to be a really, really good one to watch.
He did have the interception last year with Tulane. A single interception.
Yeah.
But, when you see them big guys in the middle, I mean, he's 6'2", but but he could definitely fill 2 gaps. I mean, his main thing is over that A gap, but he could plug them both, and he can certainly muddy up, the RPO.
Yep.
Do you guys have any other players that you want to name drop? You guys. I mean, you guys have covered close to 20 players, so.
Yeah, I think for me, just a couple guys. So a couple guys to watch that aren't necessarily 2026 prospects, but you're looking to kind of get into 2027 and 2028. But I've read reports and just saw some videos of true freshman wide receiver Taz Williams Jr. for Baylor making plays. He'll likely redshirt this year, would be my guess, because they brought in Texas State transfer Cole Wilson, who was with Spavital 2 years ago at Texas State. I think he transferred to Texas State, didn't he? Or was Spavital somewhere else? Sorry, I don't know if that's true or not. Texas State transferred. That's what I thought. Okay, 43 receptions, 630 yards, 4 touchdowns last year. He had 66 for 747 and 8. Last year, he's 5'9", 170, probably going to play in the slot. I know, Steve, you mentioned that you like Cameron a little bit better out of the slot, but it seems like Cole Wilson will come in and fill that. And then I've heard rave reviews out of Baylor camp about San Diego State transfer Lewis Brown IV. He's a senior as well. He put up 620 yards and 3 touchdowns last year, but from everything I've heard out of camp, he's another guy that will look to contribute in the wide receiver room. Outside of that, I think obviously you have you have one of the most fun wide receivers in the 2027 class, in my opinion, in Cam Coleman. So I'm excited to watch him as well, and with those other receivers in Auburn's room. And everything out of Auburn camp is the offense is kind of like wait and see, but they love the wide receiver room. They think that they're 6 deep at wide receiver, and I think based on that, their defense has been ahead of the offense all camp, is what I've read, and that's no surprise. Most defenses are ahead of offenses early in this process. But again, that's why just the matchup to me is this is like one of Sawyer Robertson's biggest game of the year. And it's not an easy schedule for Baylor. They have some tough, I think they play SMU, if I'm not mistaken.
We're covering that game next week.
Yeah, they have a really, really, really tough schedule. So again, I think, that matchup, Baylor offense versus Auburn defense is what I'll be focused on.
Yeah, the only 2 names I'll quickly touch on are the Baylor edges. As it stands right now, I don't see them getting their names called in April. But of course, as we keep saying, that'll change. So I'll start Keyron Crawford, 6'4", 250 pounds, good length. He's got a great first step. He's not a finisher though. And he's not, he needs to improve against the run. So probably he's more of a rotational piece right now, but keep an eye. You may hear his name. I wouldn't be surprised tomorrow night. And then Jackie Marshall, 6'2", 270 pounds. Sorry. He's got a very high motor as a pass rusher. He's versatile. He uses leverage. He's got good effort. he's a solid starter in the Big 12. And as far as, getting drafted in the NFL, I think he may be a fringe guy, but he might hear his name called. Taylor, I saw you perk up. So do you have something on him?
No, not on him. I was just thinking you went back to the D line, and it reminded me of Texas A&M transfer Tamu Manu Pepe. He's 6'3", 380 pounds. So that is a big old boy. He's number 88 for Baylor. So he'll be right in the middle of that defense, number 88. That guy is very, very big. So just another name to throw out there as well, along with Jackie Marshall. But I did have Jackie Marshall, highest graded returning player for Baylor's defense in terms of PFF grade. So he had a good year in 2024.
Baylor has put some large nose tackles into the NFL within the last 4 years, but I'm trying to remember their names. Was it Aki Sion? Like they had like a 300.
Siaki Ika?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So I'm hearing that like everybody has a type. Right. Don't scout the helmet, but yet they still have a type. So,
well, they had the Panthers took him, I think, in the COVID year. Thank you. That's who I was thinking of. Right. Yep. And then Lynch got drafted by the Vikings. That was same year, the COVID.
And even before,
before the COVID year.
I would say before that, they had Andrew Billings, who played for a long time. Last 10 years, they put some defensive tackles in the league.
Yep. Okay, well, do you guys want to let everybody know about all of the draft content that you make?
Sure, yeah. Taylor, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so you can find all my content over on X. You can see my name down there. You can follow me on X, footballwithchaw.com. Also has some blogs that I've been writing. Things that I've been doing as I've dived into, this 2026 NFL draft class. So some fun things over there. And then I actually just posted my first video on Football with Chaw YouTube channel. And that is a breakdown of Avery Johnson's performance against Iowa State. I just recorded the Rocco Becht side of that same breakdown earlier today, and I'll post that probably tomorrow. I also want to look at Jalen Daniels. I think I'm going to take a look at the quarterbacks from this matchup as well next week when we kind of dive into that tape and see how Jackson Arnold and my QB1 Sawyer Robertson performed in that game. So it'll be exciting to see that. But you can find all my content there, and totally free. I'm here on every Thursday as the opener to the Late Show with Steve. So go ahead, Steve.
Yep, we're a heck of an opening act, right? I think we're the foreigner to the Def Leppard, and Jim, you'll get that reference. Yeah. By the way, I think I was Taylor's first subscriber last night on YouTube. So make sure you take a look and check it out because he did a great job. He made a great case for the game that Avery Johnson had in Farmageddon last week. Hey, my handle for X or Twitter is in there at Steve Southwest Florida SWFL. The YouTube channel is coming together. I call the show Tape and Turbines. Tomorrow, actually, in the morning, I'm recording a New York Jets preview show with Anthony Russo, and that'll launch sometime over the weekend. Now that I'm, not worried about competing with Draft Professor shows this holiday weekend, so it gives me more flexibility. And I've got a couple of Substack pieces, and I got to edit it and make sure it makes sense so that my ever-going mind, conveys itself. But the Substack should be launching mid-September. And like Taylor, we're the best warm-up act in the business.
Definitely. And maybe I have to come up with a better term than warm-up act. We can't all podcast at the same time, but we will have EJ and Andrew coming on at 9 p.m. Eastern, and they are previewing the Virginia Tech South Carolina game.
Nice.
So we're giving you a little bit of a dose of quarterbacks because there's 4 quarterbacks that we're covering today that are in the draft, and not all of them are going to get – you're not going to see a lot of Sawyer Robertson love, right? Not until November, but this channel's covering them now.
That's right. I'm happy to go more in depth if you want me to. You want me to get okay, first off, let me ask you this. Do we do predictions on this? Do we for these or no? We stay away.
You can make a prediction.
Oh, I heard one last night, so let's go for it.
Okay, I got Baylor 38-31. That's my score. I think
that's it. I'm done. I was literally going to do that.
I was gonna say Baylor 30. I think at home with the defense with Aranda, I think Sawyer Robertson is just to me. And I'm going to give you 2 comps for Sawyer Robertson, one of which is not even a football comp. And anyone that watches the NBA will understand this comp. Tyrese Halliburton. It's not traditional. He doesn't have a traditional shot. Tyrese Halliburton doesn't. Sawyer Robertson doesn't have a traditional throwing motion. But he knows how to lead. He knows how to move the ball down the field. A lot of his tape I was watching was just like they'd get backed up in runs, be 3rd and 12, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 13, and he'd make a play to get them out of it, right? So a guy like – it just reminds me of Tyrese Halliburton, the fact that everyone's going to say, oh, he's got a terrible throwing motion. It's too long. Everyone said that about Tyrese Halliburton. What did he do? He went to game 7 of the finals with Oklahoma City. But from a football standpoint, I think this comp is going to make Steve laugh, and I've been waiting all day to say it. He told me not to spoil it. He wants my real reaction. Sawyer Robertson is Colin Kaepernick if his running and passing ability was flipped. So
Hey God, I gotta think about this now. I gotta envision this.
So think about Colin Kaepernick. He's able to bust through for 20, 30, 40-yard runs, right? He has the athleticism, but I
got to first rein in the hair, so I got to do that.
Primary job, like Colin Kaepernick ran for 1,000 yards multiple times in college. Sawyer Robertson's not going to do that, but Colin Kaepernick couldn't. I mean, Colin Kaepernick's issue, like when he left the NFL, is because he had 3 straight seasons with his QBR under 55. Like his QBR was bad to end his career. Like he wasn't good at the end of his career. But when he was at the peak, he only ran for like 280, 350 yards in a single season when he was good at the 49ers. That's what Sawyer Robertson did last year, and he protected the ball with 28 touchdowns and 8 in interceptions. I think he throws an incredible deep ball, just like kind of, how Colin Kaepernick just kind of wound up and threw it long, and it was completed, and it was just in a perfect spot. Like you always wondered, like, man, how did Colin Kaepernick make that throw to only where the receiver can catch it? I mean, that's littered all over Sawyer Robertson's tape. I mean, he had multiple balls he threw 2 balls, go routes against DJ McKinney in the Colorado game. Perfectly placed balls where nobody but his receiver can catch. Beat DJ McKinney for a touchdown on more than one occasion. So I think because of Sawyer Robertson, I give them the edge. I just have some concerns about Auburn's play calling, as well as just Jackson Arnold. Jackson Arnold being, in my opinion, a little bit less of a quarterback prospect than Sawyer Robertson. Second year in the system, he wasn't even named the starter until after week 2 last year. So Sawyer Robertson battled through, is able to get the job for his senior year, and yeah, I think he gets a really big win. And I think there's some question marks about Auburn and Hugh Freeze coming out of this, and maybe even some questions about getting multiple bids for the Big 12 this year.
Well, you stole my thunder.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, he literally stole my exact score prediction. It was one of those get out of my head moments. So, all right. Well, I am taking Baylor. The 38-31 is gone. So, I'll bring it down a little. I'll say Baylor 33, Auburn. Oh, you know what? Let's have fun. Let's say Auburn 19. Let's call it a blowout.
Okay. I like it.
Right.
So my prediction is that it's a push. Each team gets 1 first-round pick, Sawyer Robertson, Keldrick Falk. That's my game prediction. But as far as the commercial for the station, we have draft content every day. So, Newt, it's good to see you. Hope soccer season's going well. Felix, thank you for stopping by. It's really good to see you here. And then Brandon, you're like the most loyal follower. I think I've seen Brandon pretty much on podcasts, I think, for the last 10 months. So it's good to see you. Yeah, good to see you again. That being said, draft content every day. Tomorrow, we are doing a mock draft at 7. So it's 7 p.m. Andrew Harbaugh is going to come on, share a mock draft he did for USA Today. And then we're going to flip on the Draft Professor Simulator and do a portion of the first round, I think. So that's where we are. right now with the content. We will have more game previews Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday next week. We will figure out what game we're doing Thursday at 7.
I think we had that. Hang on. I think we did put it in there, which one we were going to cover. Well, give me 1 second. Next week.
So next week, there's not that many games.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah. So yeah, because you had said that the only game is Illinois-Duke.
So the Illinois-Duke will be on Thursday. The question is whether it's at 7 or whether it's at 9. And we will discuss that here very shortly off camera. But for the 90 podcasters, a draft professor, for Steve, for Taylor, for myself, thank you so much for stopping by. Hit that subscribe on YouTube, please and thank you. And we will see you on a podcast again tomorrow night.